The ancient Maasai have a saying, "The land remembers those who protect it." In the vast, golden expanse of Tanzania's Serengeti Game Reserve, no one embodied this truth more than Makonde, the man who spoke to lions. The morning air shimmered with an unnatural heat as the thermometer crept toward 45 degrees Celsius, baking the savanna into submission. Most creatures had retreated to whatever shade they could find, the normally vibrant plains eerily still under the merciless sun. But one vehicle kicked up dust on the horizon, a weathered Land Rover moving with determination through the shimmering heat waves. Behind the wheel sat Makonde, his leathery hands gripping the steering wheel with the same quiet strength he'd shown for over half a century. At 73, his body had begun to betray him, but his spirit remained unbroken, a living legend whose name was whispered with reverence throughout the reserve. "Just one more check," he muttered to himself, ignoring the sweat streaming down his temples and the tightness that had been building in his chest since dawn. "The rhino needs me." The injured black rhino had been discovered yesterday, a deep gash along its flank, likely from a territorial dispute. Makonde couldn't rest, knowing the magnificent creature was suffering alone in the brush. He'd forgotten his medication in his hurry to leave at first light, a detail that would soon prove fatal. The Land Rover lurched to a stop near a dense thicket. Makonde stepped out, the scorching air enveloping him like a furnace. Through his binoculars, he spotted the rhino lying in the patchy shade, its massive side rising and falling with labored breaths. The wound looked angry and raw against its gray hide. "Easy now, old friend," he whispered, approaching with the careful, measured steps that had earned him the trust of countless wild creatures. His love for these animals transcended mere conservation. It was a sacred covenant. The rhino's eyes, small and intelligent, tracked him without fear. Makonde smiled. Even after 50 years, this moment of connection never lost its magic. Then, without warning, fire erupted in his chest, a vice-like pain that stole his breath and sent him staggering. The binoculars tumbled from his grasp as he clutched at his shirt. His knees buckled, and the savanna tilted sickeningly around him. "Help!" he gasped, but his voice was barely a whisper lost in the vastness of the plains. By miraculous fortune, Elijah and Musa were tending to zebras nearby when they heard a faint sound carried on the hot breeze. Not quite a call, more like a disruption in the natural rhythm of the wilderness. "Did you hear that?" Elijah paused, head tilted. They found Makonde collapsed in the tall grass, his dark skin ashen, pulse fluttering erratically beneath Musa's trembling fingers. "His medicine. Where is it?" Musa frantically searched the old man's pockets, finding nothing. "Radio the center," Elijah barked, already performing CPR. "Tell them it's Makonde." The response was immediate, all activity in the reserve grinding to a halt as rangers mobilized. But with every passing minute, the light in Makonde's eyes dimmed further. By the time they reached the medical facility, his pulse was barely detectable. The doctors worked feverishly, the defibrillator whining as it charged again and again. 15 agonizing minutes passed before the lead physician stepped back, his expression answering the unspoken question hanging in the small room. "He's gone," he said softly. "His heart gave out before you even reached us." The news spread through the reserve like wildfire, leaving stunned silence in its wake. Something fundamental had shifted in the Serengeti. Its spiritual anchor had been cut loose. Following Makonde's wishes, they prepared a traditional funeral within the reserve itself. At dawn the next day, as golden light spilled across the savanna, staff gathered around a simple wooden platform where Makonde lay in dignified repose, his weathered face peaceful, as if merely dreaming of his beloved animals. Elijah stood beside his mentor, memories flooding back of patrols and rescues, of lessons learned under the African sky. His hand trembled as he touched the cool skin that had once been so full of life. The first roar silenced all conversation. Low and resonant, it rolled across the gathering like thunder, freezing everyone in place. From the edge of the compound, a massive male lion approached, muscles rippling beneath its tawny coat, mane catching fire in the morning light. Panic rippled through the crowd as people scrambled for safety. Yet the lion showed no aggression as it strode purposefully toward Makonde's body, its amber eyes fixed on the fallen ranger. "Nobody move," Elijah whispered, recognition dawning. "That scar on its flank, it's the lion we rescued 15 years ago, the one Makonde nursed back to health." The great cat circled the platform once, twice, then settled at the foot of Makonde's bier, bowing its majestic head in what could only be described as mourning. The crowd watched in awe as the king of beasts paid tribute to the king of men. When they carried Makonde to his final resting place beneath a sprawling acacia, the lion followed at a respectful distance. As they lowered him into the earth, it unleashed a roar so primal and grief-stricken that it echoed across the plains, bringing tears to the eyes of even the most hardened rangers. Long after the humans had departed, the lion remained, sentinel beside the fresh grave. Days passed, and still it returned, sometimes at dawn, sometimes when the stars wheeled overhead, a ghost-like guardian paying endless tribute. Word of the lion's vigils spread beyond the reserve's boundaries, drawing visitors who hoped to glimpse this extraordinary display of animal gratitude. They were rarely disappointed. The sight of the magnificent predator in silent communion with Makonde's grave became an enduring image of the interconnectedness of all life in the Serengeti. In the years that followed, rangers would tell new recruits about Makonde, not just his conservation achievements, but how a lion mourned him, how the animals seemed to sense his passing. On quiet nights, some claimed to hear a distant roar that didn't quite sound like grief or rage, but rather like a promise, a covenant between species that transcended death itself. In the heart of the Serengeti, where the circle of life turns with brutal efficiency, one old man had left a legacy of compassion that even the wilderness remembered. And perhaps, just perhaps, in the golden eyes of a scarred lion, Makonde's spirit lives on.